journeyers who promise friendship, only to reveal their true colors as betrayal casts its shadow. The heartache that follows can be overwhelming, leaving us questioning the authenticity of human connection. This masterclass on betrayal will teach you how to overcome deception and guide you towards a renewed sense of trust and optimism. Register now on propheticpath.co.uk.
تبارك الذي بيده الملك وهو على كل شيء قدير الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا وهو العزيز الغفور الذي خلق 7 سماوات طباقا ما ترى في خلق الرحمن من تفاوت فارجع البصر هل ترى من فتور ثم ارجع البصر كرتين ينقلب إليك البصر خاسئا وهو حسير ولقد زينا السماء الدنيا بمصابيح وجعلناها رجوما للشياطين وأعتدنا لهم عذاب السعير صدق الله العظيم صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله وسلم عليك يا حبيب الله لجپال نبی دردادی دوا دینا لجپال نبی میرے دردادی دوا دینا جد وقت نزاوی دامن دی ہوا دینا میں لات تیری پڑھنا میں ذکر تیرا کرنا کا میں لات تیری پڑھنا میں ذکر تیرا کرنا اس ذکر دی برکت نال اس ذکر دی برکت نال میری قبر وسا دینا لجپال نبی میرے دردادی دوا دینا دل رودا ہے آقا دل رودا ہے آقا دل رودا ہے آقا دل رودا ہے جادینے جدولوں کی مدینے نو دل رودا ہے جادینے बिया का दरबार दिखा दे ना लजपाल नबी मेरे दरदानी दवा देना सरकार दी महफिल विच जोनिया बिछा बैठे सरकार दी महफिल विच जोनिया बिछा बैठे लाज रख ले वे लजपाला लजपाला लाज रख ले वे लजपाला खाली ना उठा देना लजपाल नबी मेरे दरदादी दवा देना जदो वक्त नज़ावे दामंदी हवा देना
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. As-salatu was-salamu ala Rasulillahi wa ala alihi wa ashabi ajma'in. Amma ba'd. As you all aware, we've just left the month of Muharram, in which a very important event occurred, and it was the event of the martyrdom of Imam Hassan radiallahu anhu at Karbala. But there's also, in the month of Safar, which we're in now, there's also another event that occurred in the family of the Ahl Bayt, which is just as important. And it's important that we also talk about this event as well. And it was the martyrdom of Imam Hassan radiallahu anhu. It was them that passed away this month, of the month of Safar. And Imam Hassan, they were an extraordinary person. There was a role model for every person of every age, because from their birth they were under instruction from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or they were under instruction from the Khulafa Rashidin, so the four Khalifs. So from day one till they passed away, they were under instruction by someone of the highest order. So they themselves were a person of the highest order, even to the point where in Jannah there's going to be billions of people that enter Jannah, and there's going to be billions of worlds in Jannah. But like in this dunya, there's kings. For example, England has its own king. There's also and there's princes. There also has to be princes in Jannah as well. And this person has reached such a status that they are known as a prince of Jannah. Now, for us, imagine, we sometimes think, oh yes, prince of Jannah, or prince of this location or of that location. But just imagine the protocol that this person will receive, even on the Day of Judgment, that they will be known that this, maybe me and yourselves will be struggling to find someone on that day to help us, someone who we can actually count on. But they are people who inside, they don't have to worry about anything on that day. If anything, they're going to receive how, for example, if a king goes past on this road and you have 10 cars in front and 10 cars behind protecting, they're going to receive that kind of treatment, but on the highest order, where you might have millions of angels in front and millions of angels behind. So this individual was a prince of Jannah, and they were also a prince in this dunya as well. They were royalty. So just amongst the Sahaba and amongst the people of the time, they were royalty walking. But what gave them what gave them that status? What was it inside them that they had reached such a status that not just a prince of England, not just a prince of this world, but a prince of the whole of Jannah, not one kingdom in Jannah, the whole of Jannah, all the 7 levels, whether it's Al-Firdaus, whether it's another level, of all of them, he's the prince. So what did they achieve through that? How did they achieve that? So they had challenges throughout their life, from the day that they were born till the day they passed away. They had challenges, and these challenges we can also learn from them. So maybe their challenges were so severe that, like I mentioned earlier, they were passed away through martyrdom, through poisoning. So maybe our challenges ain't as severe, but what we can do is, through their challenges, maybe we could also learn how to react correctly. Maybe we can, in that reaction, maybe it's our success. Maybe we can take, because if this person is royalty and he's guaranteed not just Jannah, he's guaranteed to be the prince of Jannah. Now if we follow him, then surely we can enter Jannah. There'll be a good chance for us. So just about them, their lineage. So they were the son of Imam Ali radiallahu anhu, who's not just any Sahaba. They are known as the king of the awliya. So this is their father. Their mother, they are the son of Sayyidah Fatima radiallahu anha, who is the queen of all the women of Jannah. So one, you've got the king of all the awliya. On the other side, you've got all the queen of all the women of Jannah. And then on top of that, through their ancestry, because there's something special about the Ahl Bayt, where everyone here, including myself, where our ancestry comes through is the father. So everyone in this masjid, they've got their ancestry through the father, through the through the grandfather, through the great grandfather, all the way up. But there's something special when it comes to the Ahl Bayt, that only them, they have their ancestry through the Prophet ﷺ. So it's through their mother. So that's one unique thing about the Ahl Bayt, is that their ancestry runs through Sayyidah Fatima radiallahu anha. So their ancestry is through their mother. So just as we mentioned, they are the son of Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu, who is the king of the awliya. They are the son of Sayyidah Fatima radiallahu anha, who again is the queen of all of the women of Jannah. Then on top of that, they are also the sons of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who is the king of all the prophets. So as you can imagine, who this being is a very special being from the mother's side, father's side, and grandparents' side. So this person is not just an ordinary person. So if a person of this caliber, if you learn from this individual's life, there's an immense benefit for a person. Now, as they were born, Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam gave glad tidings to the family of Sayyidina Hassan radiallahu anhu of his status. Also, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam themselves gave him tahniq. So tahniq is when a baby is born, you put dates or something sweet around their gums, so you chew on it and you put it around their gums. It was Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that gave them tahniq. They were the ones who also, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam named them Hassan. And this is another unique thing about Imam Hassan radiallahu anhu, is that before him there was no name Hassan. So they're the first person in the world that have this name, which is Hassan. There was there was places and villages and cities that had name Hassan, but not a person, not an individual person. It was this individual that has this specific name. Now, that's their lineage. What about their descendants? Because it's been 1400 years that they've been, give or take 1350, that they passed away. Now, so what about their lineage? Such great awliya have come through their bloodline. So just to name a few, Imam Mahdi, he will be from the lineage of Imam Hassan radiallahu anhu. Also, Sayyidina Abdullah al-Kamil, he was through the lineage of Imam Hassan. Mullah Idris al-Awwal, who is the founder of Morocco, he was through the lineage of Imam Hassan. Sayyidina Abul Hassan al-Shazli, who the tariqah that we follow, the Shazliya tariqah of the Tasawwuf, again, he was through the lineage of Imam Hassan. Imam Jazuli, he was again from it. Sayyidina Abdus Salam ibn Mashish. Also Sayyidina Abdul Aziz the Bagh, who we follow, whose teachings we follow in this masjid on the tariqah, they were from the lineage of Imam Hassan, and so is Sayyidina Abdul Qadir al-Jilani. So these are their children. So just imagine these high-ranking awliya that I've named of the highest order. These are from the bloodline of this individual. So just imagine his status, where it is. And in terms of their upbringing, as mentioned earlier, Imam Hassan radiallahu anhu, for up till this age of 7 years old, they were raised by the Prophet ﷺ directly. So they had that special bond with the Prophet ﷺ, and they were directly raised up to the age of 7. After the Prophet ﷺ passed away at the age 7 or 8, then Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu took over their upbringing. And it wasn't just Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu who took over it. For every Khalif they were under, and they were getting taught by every Khalif. So from Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu to Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu to Hazrat Usman radiallahu anhu and their blessed father Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu. So they had received teaching and they received upbringing from the people from the highest order. And each one of the people that taught them had glad tidings of Jannah before they had passed away. They were Ashra Mubashra. So, and he himself, he raised through the ranks until the martyrdom of Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu, and where he himself became the 5th Khalif. And sometimes we say that the 4 rightly guided Khalifs, it's not 4 rightly guided Khalifs, it's actually 5. And the reason why they don't say 5 is because Sayyidina Hassan radiallahu anhu, his Khalifat was only for 6 months, so they don't class it as the Khalifat. But in reality, we should class it because, again, they were part of the Khulafa Rashidin. So they were also a Khalif of the Muslim Empire. In terms of their bravery and how they were, they faced, just like Imam Hussein radiallahu anhu, they faced the highest of tests and highest of trials in this dunya, and hardest of challenges. Also, they participated from the time they were baligh, they would participate in every single battle that the Muslims faced. Even to the point where when the Sayyidina Usman radiallahu anhu was martyred, it was Imam Hussein and Imam Hassan radiallahu anhu that were guarding the front door to prevent anybody coming close to the Khalif, which was at the time was Sayyidina Usman radiallahu anhu. And it was them cursed people, they came through the back door, so they came to jump the garden wall and they came through the back door, and that's how they did it. But it was Imam Hassan, such bravery that him and Imam Hussein, they were guarding the front door, they put their life on the line. In terms of the qualities of Imam Hassan radiallahu anhu, he was the one in the whole of the Sahaba, in the whole of the Ahl Bayt that resembled Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam the most. They say that he was 90% like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even to the point where his face, his features, his hair mubarak, his shoulders, his walk, everything was like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It was a complete resemblance. And it was said that Sahaba, when they used to yearn after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed away, when they used to yearn for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they used to say, "Where's Hassan? I would like to see him." And then when they used to see Hassan, it's like that their heart felt at ease, because it's like they felt they saw Rasulullah. Exactly, even their voice was the same as the Prophet ﷺ, to the point where some Sahaba, if they would hear his voice, they'd think his Rasulullah ﷺ stood behind them. That's how closely they resembled the Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet ﷺ also mentioned that with regards to Imam Hassan, saying that to this meaning, loving them is like loving Rasulullah ﷺ, and hating them is like hating Rasulullah ﷺ. So just imagine the closeness of bond that they have with the Prophet ﷺ. So now that's about their lineage, their qualities, but what about their teachings? Now, there's qualities that a person, just imagine if a person is a prince of paradise, not prince of this dunya, a prince of paradise. Imagine what kind of qualities this individual is going to have inside of him. And just imagine where he's got these qualities taught to him from. He's got taught from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and from his father Imam Ali radiallahu anhu, who taught him. And what did they teach him? They taught him futuha, which translates to spiritual maturity. Now, some people here might think, what's the difference in physical maturity and spiritual maturity? Maybe there's some person here who might be 15 years old, but spiritually he might have the age of a 30-year-old. Or maybe there's somebody outside that you know in your life, maybe they're 50 years old, 60 years old, but maybe they've got the spiritual age of a 10-year-old. Maybe they're always just causing fights, maybe they're always causing issues with people, it's just always about them. So they're really, in reality, they're babies. They might be 60 years old and their body might be 60 years old, but spiritually they're babies. So that's what spiritual maturity is. And this, just to teach you one of their levels of spiritual maturity, is at the time of their martyrdom, which we mentioned earlier, that was in Safar, in the month of Safar. And what they taught was forgiving the enemy when you have the ability to take revenge or harm them. So just imagine somebody's harmed you to such a level where you've got the opportunity now to harm this person, and you've got the opportunity to take revenge on this person, and they can't even do nothing about it. You got that kind of control. The tables have switched, as they say, and you got that kind of control on that person. But instead, in that situation, the form of shukr, and you forgive the person, forgive the enemy. That is what you call spiritual maturity, and this is what they taught in their life. And this is an example in their own life at their time of their death. As what happened was, after they had given up the Khalifa, they were back in Medina Sharif, and the enemies still wanted them dead, because as long as these people, they thought as long as Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein are alive, they've always got an opportunity to become Khalifs again, because that was their right, because that's what they were. There was their haqq. So what they did was, they got a woman they convinced her, who was after greed, who was after wealth. They convinced her that we will give you X amount of money. And they then, through people who knew Imam Hassan, they created a situation where a proposal came for marriage. And then Imam Hassan then married this woman. And they had a habit, that when they used to get up for Fajr, they used to do wudu, and after doing wudu, they drink water. And his wife knew of this habit. And what happened was, as she knew of this habit, then she had poisoned the water. So he had got up for Fajr, done his wudu, drank the water. After that, he had realized, because he started vomiting blood and coughing blood. He realized what had happened. He realized he'd been poisoned. And at that point, he had also knew what had happened, who had caused it. But so his family came, the Ahl Bayt came, Imam Hussein radiallahu anhu came, and they knew that what had happened, that he'd been poisoned. And Imam Hussein knew that Imam Hassan radiallahu anhu knows who's done this. So Imam Hussein asked, "Oh, my beloved brother, who's done this to you?" And Imam Hassan didn't mention it. And this isn't just me and you saying this, Imam Hussein saying it. This is like Imam Hussein was the government at the time. So in this same situation, like what I mentioned, that they taught was futur, which is spiritual maturity. In this situation, they had the opportunity to get their revenge. They could have caught the woman, they could have hung her, they could have stoned her to death, whatever the punishment was, capital punishment was at the time, we don't know. So, but what did he do? Instead, he said, "It's my time to go. Allah's willed it." And he said there's no harm, he doesn't want to take revenge. And so he passed away. This is why, these are the qualities that I'm referring to, why these people are classed as princes of paradise. They're not just normal beings. They don't just have normal qualities in them. They've been taught these qualities qualities from the day they were born, by the highest people from the highest order. And this is the same example as us. Just how Imam Hassan radiallahu anhu was taught spiritual maturity from Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu. In the same way, we taught spiritual maturity through what? Namaz, through zikr. Allah's teaching us spiritual maturity. But the thing is, what happens is with ourselves is we just pray, but we're not. It's like a boxer who's trained for 6 months for a fight, but then when it comes to the fight day, he doesn't want to enter the ring. It's like he just wants to go sleep. So that's the exact same situation as, but this is how we should try to look, and how can we use Imam Hassan radiallahu anhu's life as an example, and how can we benefit from that ourselves. The second teaching that they taught was that they had given such a sacrifice for the betterment of the ummah. And this sacrifice, it wasn't just a small thing. For example, someone's give £1,000, or someone's give a house, or someone's donated £10,000 to the masjid. It was a huge sacrifice. And what was that sacrifice? Is that they gave up their own. At the time, there was 2 warring parties trying to war in the middle of a war over what? Over the Islamic Empire. There was the Umayyads in Damascus, and then there was the Khulafa Rashidin, and at the time they were in Kufa. So there was 2 warring parties, and they were literally in the middle of a war. And what did they do? They gave up their caliphate. So just imagine, they gave up their right of their empire, not just a house, of an empire, to stop the war. So this is another reason why the qualities. Just imagine that level where, imagine if someone says somebody is fighting with us over. It happens like this all the time in places like Pakistan and Bangladesh and India, where people are always fighting over land. So just imagine if one person just stopped thinking, you won't even give a land size of this masjid, forget an empire. And we're not talking small amount of land. We're not talking like now where you can go from here to Spain or from here to Turkey in 4 hours. From one side of the Islamic Empire to the other, it probably used to take 2 years of travel. That's how vast it was. So, and he gave it all up for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal. But this is, so what's the teaching us? When you give up something for Allah Azza wa Jal, then Allah Azza wa Jal will give you something better. So what did he do? He gave up his kingdom in this dunya, and Allah made him a prince of the kingdom of Jannat. So this is again what he's teaching us, is that when you're giving up for something for Allah Azza wa Jal, He will give you something better than that thing. And even that's one of the reasons, even Imam Mahdi, like we mentioned earlier on, that Imam Mahdi is from what? Is from the bloodline of Sayyidina Hassan radiallahu anhu. And what's Allah gonna give to Imam Mahdi? He's gonna give him the kingdom back. So it's as if he gave it up for the sake of Allah, and Allah's giving it back down to his bloodline. So that's another thing that we should take from his teachings, is that if you give up something for Allah, whether it's a sin, whether it's money, whether it's time, Allah will give you something better in return. Third thing, giving respect to Sahaba. Now we hear certain groups, I don't want to name them, and they talk sometimes bad about Sahaba, they talk sometimes bad about Ahl Bayt. And he gave up the kingdom out of respect for the Sahaba. Because on the other side of the wall was another Sahaba, Sayyidina Amir Muawiyah radiallahu anhu. So he, being a Sahaba himself, understood the status of a Sahaba. And he, out of adab for the other Sahaba, he gave up the whole dunya at the time, because it was 1/3 or 2/3 of the whole known world. Because this is before Americas had been discovered. There was no Americas then. There was no Australia. There weren't no African lands like that. It was just the Middle East, Europe, and Africa and Asia. And the empire stretched from Pakistan, India, all the way to Morocco to Turkey. So it was 2/3 of the known world at the time. So he had gave up all of that out of respect for the Sahaba and the status of the Sahaba. So that's the third thing he's teaching, was this, to have adab and the highest level of adab for the Sahaba. The fourth teaching that he taught us, that sometimes we say that sometimes a person is going to think that, if a person was already a prince of paradise, why did they go through such hardship? Like we mentioned that Imam Hassan in Karbala were martyred, and Sayyidina Hassan was martyred through poisoning. Why did they go through such hardship? And it's mentioned that why? Because what they were doing was they were continuing the mission of the Prophet ﷺ. For them, that's what it was. It wasn't hardship. For them, as the Prophet ﷺ passed away, but this message still had to reach people. There's still people that are dying without Iman. So what they did is they wanted to put it to the whole world. It's like, for example, if there's a burning building and you know there's people in there, you're safe. But what would you do? Would you just stand there or walk off? No, you'd put yourself in harm to try to save the people. In the same way, he was safe. He's a prince of paradise. But what did he do? He put himself in harm to save us and to make sure that, because at the time of Imam Hussein, at that time, it was Yazid that was in power. What was happening with Yazid? He was drinking alcohol, and it was corrupting the deen. So what would have happened was maybe the deen would have come to us corrupted. So for that, they sacrificed their own life to make sure that the purity of the deen reached us. So that's another reason, is that they were continuing the mission of the Prophet ﷺ, and that's what we should do as well. That's our teaching, that we should take that. It's not over. The Prophet ﷺ, they're the last of the Anbiya. So the responsibility is on us now to push it forward. So that's the 4 teachings. So the first one is forgiving. When a person has control of a situation where they can take power and they can take revenge on a person, at that point, forgiving the person. Second teaching was, if you give up something for the sake of Allah will give you something better. The third teaching was to give respect to the Sahaba of the highest order. If you're not going to talk good about the Sahaba or of the awliya or of the Ahl Bayt, just don't mention it. If somebody wants to talk about it, just walk off. Even if it's in a someone's in a bayan in the list, just walk out of the masjid. You don't have to listen to it, but you don't have to. So that's giving the utmost respect. If you're not going to say anything good within complete adab of them, it's best not to say anything. And the fourth teaching is that they went through hardship and they gave their life to make sure the deen reached us. So we should as well go through hardship and give our lives. Okay, we don't have to physically give it like they had to give it, but give our lives, meaning time. That's like giving our lives right now. It's giving our time. That is life. Life is time. So giving our time and sacrificing our time to make sure that it reaches people ahead of us in the purest form like it's reached us. And lastly, Safar, the month itself, Safar, it means journey. So Safar, it means journey. And there's 2 important journeys that happen in this month. First journey that happened was Hijrah. So it was the journey of Rasulullah ﷺ from Makkah Sharif to Medina Sharif. That was an important journey that took place in the month of Safar. And second journey that was even more important that happened in the month of Safar is that the Prophet ﷺ started the journey to go to meet Allah forever and to go to be with them forever, because we know that they passed away in Rabiul Awwal, in the early days of Rabiul Awwal. But it was in Safar that their illness started and their temperature and their fever became very, very severe. It was in Safar, so they started preparing the journey to meet their Rabb in this month. So that's another lesson that we should be learning from, is that in this month, how can we start our own journey to Allah? Just how maybe it's hijrah from Mecca to Medina Sharif. So maybe it's for us, it's hijrah from a life full of sin to a life where we stop in sin and getting close to Allah Azza wa Jal. Maybe for us, it was the Rasulullah's time to go meet Allah Azza wa Jal physically. Maybe it's our time now to go to Allah Azza wa Jal as well. Spiritually, meaning getting close to Allah Azza wa Jal and closer and closer and closer to Allah Azza wa Jal and leaving this life that we've got of sin and heedlessness. So may Allah Azza wa Jal guide us and allow us to benefit from this nasiyah. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah, Jazakallah khair, Ustaad Shaban. As has been mentioned, Sayyidina Imam Hassan, Imam Hussain radiallahu anhu, they were very spiritually mature. Such grand maturity spiritually. And in this center, we also teach and help ourselves and others, inshallah, to develop spiritual maturity, to adopt those qualities, to bring those qualities into one's life, so that they can go out there and also continue with the mission that Sayyidina Imam Hassan, Sayyidina Imam Hussain radiallahu anhu continued with. So inshallah, after the actual majlis, if anybody would like to learn about this special maturity, then you can come and approach myself, inshallah, and I will go through that step by step with yourselves. Inshallah, now we will break for Maghrib, and thereafter we'll have azkars, if I could request, inshallah, for yourselves.
On the journey of life, we encounter individuals who promise friendship only to reveal their true colors as betrayal casts its shadow. The heartache that follows can be overwhelming, leaving us questioning the authenticity of human connection. This masterclass on betrayal will teach you how to overcome deception and guide you towards a renewed sense of trust and optimism. Register now on propheticpath.co.uk. On the journey of life, we encounter individuals who promise friendship only to reveal their true colors as betrayal casts its shadow.